Welcome to today's news briefing presented by Ethnic Media Services. I'm Sandy Close, Director of EMS, and your moderator for today. Our topic is the California Forestry Sector Jobs Initiative, Cultivating Diverse Leaders and Environmental Sustainability. This initiative highlights the critical need to promote careers in forestry, emphasizing forest management, wildlife prevention, and sustainability. It also works to engage underrepresented communities in the forestry workforce, such as women, minorities, and veterans. Funded by Cal Fire, the initiative seeks to bridge workforce gaps by providing resources for education, training, and career pathways. These efforts contribute to equitable access to forestry jobs, fostering community resilience and environmental stewardship across California. Our speakers today will provide insights into these efforts and share resources all of us can disseminate to our audiences. We encourage our speakers to speak slowly, as I'm doing, for interpreters, and ask our reporters, please enter questions in the chat box. We will address questions after each speaker as time allows. A recording of today's briefing, along with speaker bios and contact information, as well as video excerpts that we develop from the presentations, will be sent to all participants today and later. Because of the holiday, possibly not until Friday. Now we are excited to introduce our speakers, each of whom is dedicated to building a stronger, more diverse forestry workforce. Our first speaker is Matt Diaz, President and CEO of the California Forestry Association. Mr. Diaz will kick us off with an overview of the initiative. Mr. Diaz, please go ahead. Mr. Diaz,
There we go.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry. Apparently I was muted. So first of all, I want to say thank you, Sandy, very much for facilitating this opportunity. I also want to thank all of our media representatives that are present this morning, because we certainly cannot do this level of engagement and education, if you will, on this initiative without you. Again, my name is Matt Diaz. I am the president of the California Forestry Association. We're also known as Calforests. We represent the forest product sector in California. So that comes with about 4 million acres of well-managed forest land in the state, as well as all the primary manufacturing facilities, forest product facilities in California. So lumber producers, bioenergy in some cases, veneer, so on and so forth. So we do represent the private sector in California. And as Sandy indicated, we are here to talk today specifically about the California Forestry Sector Jobs Initiative, which is an initiative that's been recently launched and is focused explicitly on trying to fill gaps within the forest product sector of California. We are focusing on trying to fill a myriad of positions, and we're trying to do that through reaching out to our partners across the state of California and beyond, to try to diversify this industry in California. This is really critical, in my opinion, and I think in many others. The industry in California, the forest product sector, is looked upon as a partner as we are wading deeper into a wildfire crisis. And as we look at issues such as forest resiliency, forest recovery, and well-managed forest as a whole, the forest product sector is definitely one of those partners out there, not the only partner, but one of the partners that is working cooperatively to try to achieve these goals. And we can't do it without a solid workforce to support our individual efforts or our collective efforts. The initiative is focusing on investing in training and establishing and educating individuals about career pathways, and focus on not only building a skilled workforce, but also fostering community resiliency and environmental stewardship across California. Pardon me. So why is this important, I suppose, is one of the questions that we often get. And it is important because, as I touched on earlier, we are faced with some significant wildfire challenges and a changing climate. And as we move deeper into a changing climate and we move deeper into this wildfire crisis, we need to build very strong partnerships. And again, as I indicated earlier, the forest products sector is facing a workforce shortage. Now, we understand that we are not alone in this, that workforce shortages are permeating a lot of different sectors out there. But we have a really critical need as it relates to California, specifically on this environmental front. And again, our sector is really important in trying to achieve some of the outcomes that we are collectively trying to achieve. And again, that is fire prevention and protection of communities, protection of rural economies, protection of air, water, wildlife habitat, so on and so forth. So the vision here is that we understand that, well, I should say this, the forest product sector has been in California for a very long time. And a lot of folks out there across our state do not understand that we exist, number one, what we stand for, number two, and who we really are. So part of today is to not only introduce you to the fact that we have this initiative, but also to introduce you to the fact that we actually have a forest product sector in California that is trying to build our ranks through diversity. Historically, this sector has done a very good job of feeding its workforce needs from within, meaning that we are generally within, just a general statement, within Northern California. And we've done a reasonable job in decades past of fulfilling our workforce needs from the communities in which we operate and are present. But the workforce needs have gone well beyond that. And so Calforests as an organization recognizes this challenge and therefore is leaning in to try to help our members and our partners to try to reach out to folks that you all represent, to try to develop an understanding and develop an educational attributes to this initiative that's going to help folks understand that we, number one, exist, but we want you to be part of our families, if you will. So in order to get that done, Calforests did prepare and ultimately was awarded a grant with CAL FIRE. And we are now we are building this initiative and we are placing ourselves into a position to be a leader in trying to spread the word about our forest product sector and to reach out to organizations that are related with the media, such as you are here, or working with community-based organizations to try to engender a level of interest in the opportunities that are representative within our sector. And when I talk about opportunities, I want to just cover that briefly. It's an integrated industry, if you will. So there's manufacturing sectors within this industry. There's forestry, natural resources related. There's distribution. There is a whole vertically integrated stream, if you will, of opportunities that are present. And so, I sit back and I think, I'm a forester. I have been for 25 years now in California. And I've been fortunate to be in across our state. And California is a very diverse state without a doubt. And that is not only socially diverse, but that is also environmentally diverse. And when we look at the state of California on the environmental diversity front, forests cover a huge sum of acres within our landscape, within our state. And amongst that, there's a significant amount of diversity amongst our forest as a whole. We have redwood dominated forests in the North Coast. We have mixed conifer. We have oak woodlands, very diverse. And so part of the goal of this initiative is to capture that level of diversity that resides within our forests of California and mirror that within our forest product sector that is helping to try to conserve and maintain these forests within California. So Sandy, that would be my brief opening, and I don't know if there's individual questions that would be answered
Yes.
at this particular time, or.
Well, this is fascinating because it's really new information. It's an area, for me at least, which is completely new. So a couple of questions, and maybe I'll take the prerogative of starting with a couple of my own before moving to the chat. First of all, roughly what are we talking about in terms of size? What is the overall workforce number you're talking about? Or is there a way to put a figure for that? How many workers are you talking about?
The initiative is focused on trying to fill approximately 1,000 positions within the forest product sector within California. Of course, the sector is much larger than that, but when we looked at the vacancy rate and we looked at the opportunity as we were preparing this grant opportunity, it appeared to us that that target number of approximately 1,000 positions across the entire integrated sector, if you will, seemed like a reasonable number to try to attain. So that's what we're focused on right now.
Okay. And secondly, there is so much emphasis put on people's housing needs. When you enter this workforce, do you need to live in one of the areas where there are forests? Do you need to move to towns or small cities close to forests? And what would you say are the expectations in terms of working for the initiative, working for the Forestry Service that require relocation and
Yeah, I understand the question. So yeah, I made mention earlier, and I think that Calforests is quite aware of the fact that you know, when folks are looking for different positions or different career paths, investigating different career paths, that there are challenges in the workforce, but there's also challenges in housing and community resiliency. So one of the issues that we early thought about was we need to have bright opportunities and relationships and partnerships with with community-based organizations, because it's often these community-based organizations that work with the diversity amongst California to help them with some of those issues. Housing is a critical one, and we know this, Sandy. That does not fall on deaf ears as it comes to us, as it comes to this initiative, I should say. And so, yes, the answer to the question is yes. There would be most likely, in most cases, there would be the necessity to move into a new community. And some of those communities, just for instance, I suppose, would be in the Eureka, California, Humboldt County area. It could be in Chico, it could be in the Redding area, Northern California, Quincy, that kind of thing. But yes, the answer is in most cases, there would be opportunities to move into some of these communities that are rural in nature and extraordinarily beautiful, and really neat portions of California that aren't often explored.
And I'm sure that our speakers today will address some of these questions, but just very important for me is a sense of career pathways. You began as a forestry worker, but could you share a little of what your own trajectory was as an example of career pathways in this field?
I'm happy to do that. My own pathway, it would only address a small sliver, if you will, of the need that we're facing within this sector. But my particular pathway was I grew up in Sacramento. I'm actually back in Sacramento now, but I grew up in Sacramento, California, and essentially in a very on a whim, I learned about forestry because, like many of the people of California, I did not even know it existed in California. After learning about it, it struck my interest, and I moved up and attended Humboldt State University, now Cal Poly Humboldt, and graduated, and worked within the industry for about 14 years or so. And then I migrated to public service for a period of time, and then I've now moved back into the private sector with Calforests. But I guess the meaningful piece there is that I feel like I'm a decent example of what we're trying to achieve here, in that there's not a lot of education or knowledge that this sector exists. And I found it by pure happenstance, if you will. And what we're trying to do is move away from finding this sector as a mere as a function of happenstance, and actually educate individuals so that we're spiking interest, peaking interest earlier on, rather than relying upon coincidence, I suppose.
Right. And that leads me to my final question before one or two I want to go to in the chat. How much training is involved, and the kind of qualifications you're looking for? Are these college educated? Can a high school plus vocational training? What kind of training prepares one to enter the forestry service?
Well, so within the forest product sector, again, we're talking about a wide array of opportunities. So some of it is career pathways that are developed through education at the university level, professional, if you will, career paths. That's the path that I chose, but by far and away, it's not the only path. So as a sector as a whole, we have so many opportunities. It could be vocational in nature, it could be truck driving, it could be working on a timber harvest or a logging crew, it could be in the natural resources sector, it could be in administration, it could be in facilities management, it could be in GIS. So it's the pathways, if you will, are varied, and it's really kind of based on the interest of the individual that seeks to learn more about what spikes their individual interest, if you will.
Right. Thank you. We have one question I do want to ask one of our colleagues to ask, Sunita Sarabji. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for that introduction. I was wondering, how do we change the stereotypes of who forest workers are? Yeah, there's the stereotype of the typical Paul Bunyan lumberjack, and I wonder how you change that to engage women as well.
That is a really great question, Sunita. And I'll say, when I was a younger man and coming into this industry, there were a limited number, the diversity was low. I'll say that. And that is both gender diversity as well as cultural diversity. We have seen shifts, I suppose, to a certain extent. And we have one of our colleagues here, Britta, that I suppose will be able to speak to that as well. Those shifts have primarily resided within the gender equality side of the equation, if you will. When I'm speaking about that, I'm speaking about forestry as a whole. And I think Chief Reischman could even address that to a certain extent within the ranks of CAL FIRE. We have seen more gender equality within forestry for sure over the course of the last decade or even 15 years. But cultural diversity is one that we're not, there's still a vacancy there. So how do you change that? That is what we're trying to do with this specific initiative. I think it comes from a position of education and awareness. From my perspective, when I talk to some of my colleagues that are female or new to the industry or whatever, it's always this, it's like this position of like, I did not know you exist. And now that I know that you exist, I'm very interested. So I think the way to get to that is exactly what this initiative is trying to do, and why we're relying upon people like you, Sunita, to help us get the word out that this forest product sector does exist, trigger interest, and then foster them along through their pathways as they are seeking opportunities into the future.
Great. Look, thank you so much, Mr. Diaz. Please stay on board as there will be questions at the end. But we'll move now to our second speaker, Chief Matthew Reischman, Deputy Director of Resource Management at CAL FIRE. Chief Reischman will discuss CAL FIRE's decision to fund this important initiative, as well as others the department is working on to enhance outreach to target communities. Chief Reischman, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Sandy, and I'm really happy to be here and have the opportunity to speak a little bit about this initiative and overall a little bit about what we're doing in the department as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a space that we focused on very hard over the last several years, not just in the context of forest management in the forestry sector, but in totality across our department, and in hopes of increasing our diversity to ultimately better answer some of the questions that we're challenged with. When I first heard about this grant, it came in through our Forest Health program, which is under our Climate and Energy program. It's a workforce development grant. And initially, I was of the impression it was just specifically focused on bolstering the workforce around the forestry sector. And as Mr. Diaz had indicated, traditionally in the forestry sector, a lot of those jobs in rural communities have been handed down from mothers and fathers to daughters and sons. Even the equipment would be passed down. And so we haven't had a huge amount of diversity and opportunity to have more folks that come in and have the ability to work in the forestry sector. And so when I saw there was a DE&I component to this particular grant and effort, it just made perfect sense based on what we were actually doing in the department and our other programs. And so, as a fire department in the emergency services businesses, sometimes we have to make fast decisions, and oftentimes people's lives and property depend on it. But if we have an opportunity to take a pause and listen and try to see a situation through a different lens, I think ultimately our decision making is better informed and we make better decisions. And so I'm really excited about this initiative, focusing on training and developing some tools, a data hub so that folks can go and find out information on jobs that are available. As was discussed, there's a whole slew of different job opportunities in the forestry sector. Some of it is boots on the ground operational, working with equipment, running chainsaws, to more technical work as a licensed or registered professional forester. And having the opportunity to reach out and try to engage young folks to come and take a look at what's going on and trying to create some diversity there is I think ultimately going to put us in a much better spot. We have been trying to bridge the gap on increasing the numbers of folks that are interested in working in the forestry sector. We know we have a forest management issue. We know we can do a better job utilizing our natural resources and the commercialization of timber products. That's an area that we need to focus on in order to create wildfire resiliency across the state. And until we get there, we're going to be struggling. We have a huge amount of acres that need to be reforested based on the fire activity we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years. And we know we have some daunting hurdles to get over moving forward. And we truly need all the support and help we can get. But if we have an opportunity to diversify ourselves and bring a little bit different approach or an understanding, or seeing that, as I said, through a different lens, I think we're going to have a better informed decision making process. And so my hope is that this initiative will be able to outreach and make contact and communicate with those folks that might be interested. The education piece is huge. And so just folks being aware that this is an opportunity that's there for them. I wanted to touch on a couple things that we have been working on in our department in order to bridge the D&I gap and be more inclusive with that. We're in the process of putting together what we call EquipMap. This is a dashboard platform that will be housed on our website. And essentially it provides the demographics of our department across the state. And it identifies language gaps and areas that we can improve as far as providing a better service to the public. But it will give folks an idea on what our demographics are as far as diversity goes across the department. So we're looking forward to having that in place within the next couple months. We've also worked on an inclusive language guide. This is a guide that we're working on with other state agencies. And we acknowledge the fact that if we can better communicate with folks, not necessarily meeting them in the middle, but meeting them in a place where they're comfortable and being able to understand and communicate. And so we have a language guide now that we've been providing to our staff and circulating so that we're all more familiar with some of the strategies and tactics that we can use to better communicate. We also have been working with CalHR and revising a lot of our applications and forms and the various forms that are available to the public so that they are more inclusive. We have recently completed a language access survey so that we can look across the state and see those areas where we need to do better in providing alternative language in order to communicate with folks when they come into our stations and have questions. So we're just doing a lot of work right now in the DE&I space, and I'm actually really proud of it. And we're going to continue to move forward. And this forestry initiative plays right into that. And we're looking forward to ultimately having better representation. And like I said, ultimately that gives us the opportunity to see a problem or a situation or a forest management condition through a slightly different lens and hopefully be able to answer that question in a better way. You know, we don't always have to, sometimes we think we always have to have the right answer. There may be more than one right answers. We just have to be open to listening and communicating and be open to hearing it. So I'll go on ahead and stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great,
and
thank you.
I'm just happy to be part of it.
Well, we have a number of questions, and I think the questions you may feel you can answer, or Mr. Diaz, either one. Alicia Wong, can you ask your question? And can you also share what media outlet you work with?
Sure. Thank you, Sandy. My name is Alicia. I'm with World Journal. World Journal is a Chinese news outlet organization. My question is, in order to apply for those jobs, do you have any requirements for the legal status of the applicants? Does he or she has to be a United States citizen or a green card holder? Thank you.
And whoever, either Mr. Diaz or Chief Reischman.
Chief, you want me to field that?
Well, yeah, go on ahead. I would have to specifically go back and consult our HR folks. I would say possibly, but I don't know definitively. I'm pretty good at letting folks know when I don't know the answer to something. So, but I would hope, Sandy, if there are questions that are posed through the course of this, that we could, be able to make a list and then circle back and provide those.
Absolutely. This is all about engaging in two-way communication. And it's as important for us to share the questions our media have. Even if our speakers can't immediately respond, we will with follow-up responses. So our next question comes from Jessica Barboza. Can you ask your question and also share what media outlet you're working with?
Hello, my name is Jessica. I'm actually with the California Conservation Corps in San Bernardino. And I was wondering if either of you have any experience with the Conservation Corps or recruiting from any of the Conservation Corps. We train young adults in natural resources and forestry related work. So we have quite a few people who would be interested and eager to enter into these positions.
Jessica, I'll take a stab at that. I know that Chief Reischman will have something to add here as well. So I am familiar with the CCCs, and in fact, I was familiar with your former director as we worked together for some time. That would be the California Conservation Corps at the state level, and the CCCs is certainly one of the organizations that we are turning to at times in different portions of the state to try to engender interest in the natural resources sector. Because again, we're talking about pretty wide spectrum of opportunity. And the CCC folks that are working on crews currently and are then, moving past their CCC time and looking for the next opportunity, when we're looking for folks that are in that forest technician realm or trying to get onto a forester trajectory or looking at biological wildlife opportunities, the opportunities and skills that the CCC's crew members obtain during their time are helpful in that space. I want to be clear that the forest product sector as a whole, we're not hiring firefighters. So that's where I would probably turn my cede the rest of this time over to Chief Reischman, because I think that he would have something to say about the CCCs and the firefighter ranks within the department.
Chief Reischman.
Yes. And so first, I would say we have a very, very good relationship with the California Conservation Corps. We work with them both in the fire capacity as well as in the forestry capacity. We know that their time on a CCC crew qualifies for our forestry technician list, and we purposefully aligned those. So your time as a Corps member, I believe the minimum requirement for our forestry technician, just as an example, is 6 months. And so that is our entry-level permanent position with the department. We use those forestry technicians on our fuels reduction crews, of which we had 10 across the state. But as a Corps member, and that's focusing largely on fuel reduction, vegetation management, prescribed fire. But we also recognize that your crew time will qualify you for our firefighter 1 list, as well as the additional experience and training that you receive as a Corps member, whether you're learning how to run a saw and you get a certification for that, or just the slew of training that you could be exposed to as a Corps member crosswalks very well into the department in order to get on both our lists for firefighting as well as for forestry. So we have, again, a very healthy relationship with the 3 Cs, and we certainly support the work they're doing, and we appreciate the fact that they're supporting us.
Great. Thank you. I am going to move on to our next speaker, Brita Goldstein.
Oh, Sandy, I think you're on mute.
How did that happen?
I can hear you.
Jessica, am I on mute?
No, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? I want to move to our next speaker, but please tell me if there's any problem with the audio.
No problem. We can hear you.
Great. Thank you. It has happened in the past. Suddenly there's a glitch and I have to disappear and one of our colleagues will take over. But this is such a fascinating exchange. I certainly don't want to have to disappear. So we move now to Brita Goldstein, Community Affairs and Communications Representative with the Green Diamond Resource Company, and she will discuss what compelled her to pursue a career in forestry. Ms. Goldstein, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sandy. It's a real privilege to be able to speak to everyone today. Again, I'm Britta Goldstein. I work in public affairs for Green Diamond Resource Company, which is a private industrial timber company based on the north coast of California. We own and manage about 400,000 acres of redwood and Douglas fir timberlands and employ about 170 resource professionals, everyone from foresters to biologists to loggers, who all work together to steward our lands. I'm also a licensed California registered professional forester. And I'll share a little bit about my career and experience in forestry today. So like Matt, I did not know what forestry was until I got to college. I originally wanted to be a wildlife biologist and started my undergraduate studies at UC Berkeley in that field in 2010. I became fascinated by forestry when I learned about its versatility. I loved that foresters must be knowledgeable about all of the resources in the forest ecosystem, not just about the trees. You need to understand hydrology, soil science, botany, wildlife ecology, all of these things in order to make decisions about caring for an entire forest. I was also drawn to forestry because of its people. I participated in the forestry club as well as the collegiate logging sports team. It's essentially a track and field style sport in which students practice historic logging skills like log rolling, tree climbing, using a bucking saw, things like that. My peers, professors, and the professionals I met at that time exuded such a special sense of integrity and a real passion for ecosystem management. I learned forestry can be tough work, and only those who really love it tend to stick with it. They all build also an extraordinary sense of community. There usually are about 1,100 active registered professional foresters, or RPFs, in any given year as folks come and go. So it's important to build relationships because most of them will last your whole career. So after school, I went on to learn my craft mostly in private forestry consulting. I was working with mostly small family forest landowners to manage their lands for a variety of objectives. I eventually earned my RPF license in 2018, and now I work on the industrial side of our private sector as a liaison between our private company, Green Diamond, and the public. And much of my work focuses on promoting forest education and understanding. So since graduating in 2014, I have witnessed the increase in demand for resource management jobs in the face of climate change and increased wildfire risk. There were not quite as many jobs when I was graduating then as there are now. And I would encourage everyone and anyone to consider a career in this field. Forestry offers a wide variety of meaningful work that all contributes to the health and sustainability of forests. Whether you choose the public sector, the private industry, a nonprofit, or tribal members, you can all make a difference wherever you choose to work. I really believe there's a job for everyone in California forestry. You do not need to be a forester to make your mark. We need biologists, truck drivers, mapping specialists, accountants, HR staff. They all act to support the same goals. And forestry is also an interesting field because we work in a long-term time scale, sometimes a century long. I won't get to see all the trees that I plant in my lifetime reach their full height, but I do it anyway. And I think that is what builds the integrity of this field, the drive to work today to make our forests healthy and resilient for the future. That said, much of our work does reward us with tangible results, like treating fuels on the landscape to support wildfire prevention, or harvesting trees and selling logs to support the financial needs of a family. There is an incredible sense of purpose and community in this work. And I think that that is something that the Jobs Initiative is trying to share. We're not just, you're not just taking a job in forestry, you're joining an industry that values sustainability and stewardship. As a woman in a traditionally male dominated industry, I can attest to the growing opportunities for diversity in forestry. When I was at UC Berkeley, I had the privilege of studying in a forestry program composed of 80% women, which is highly unusual. But it was so important for me to grow in that space and feel supported. Women bring a unique perspective, skills, and creativity that are increasingly valued in this field. And I've seen many of the women that I went to school with and have worked with over time grow into these really specialized positions in the forestry field. By pursuing careers in forestry, women not only challenge stereotypes, but also inspire future generations to follow in their paths. The women foresters who have come before me have blazed a trail, but we're certainly not done yet. There's so much more work to do to make the forestry sector an inviting place for women and people of all backgrounds, and this jobs initiative is a key step. It will actively work to support women and other underrepresented groups in joining this essential workforce. We won't be able to meet the demands of California forest management without everyone who wants to help. So to all the future recruits from the Jobs Initiative, I say welcome, I'm glad you're here, and let's get to work. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. That was a very eloquent testimonial to your own lived experience as a forestry professional. A question again from Alicia Wong. Can you ask your question, Alicia?
Thank you, Sandy. Excuse me. It's Alicia again. So my question is, do you have a recruiting website where we can see all those listing jobs? Which website we can apply for those jobs? Do we need to go to the traditional recruiting website like Indeed or LinkedIn? Thank you.
I think I'll let Matt speak to the work that Calforests and the Jobs Initiative are doing, but I'll say that there are quite many more resources about job announcements now than there were when I was graduating. There's several organizations, including the California Licensed Foresters Association, and then of course all the forestry schools that provide resources to students and non-students about how to find these jobs. But Matt, please, I'd like to hear more.
Could I ask you, could you put some of those references or recommendations in the chat?
Sure.
Great. And Mr. Diaz, do you want to add to Ms. Goldstein's?
Yeah, so for the initiative that we're discussing today, there is a specific website that's integrated into the greater Calforest website. I've just put the URL in the chat here, and it's caforestryworkforce.com. That is going to be the website that is supporting this initiative specifically. And Britta, I'm sure, is busy away right now capturing some other sources as well.
Great. And then a question comes from Rosanna Huang. Rosanna, can you ask your question?
Hi, this is Rosanna from International Daily News. Since International Daily News start from 1981, my question is, please share the career and wage statistic resource link updates with us. Thank you.
So just to give people a little bit of a sense of what you're likely to earn from a starting position up to as you advance in terms of wages. Important question. I'm not sure who can take that on, either by responding in the chat with a reference, or do you want to share your own experience, Ms. Goldstein, in basically not a definitive response, here is what you're likely to earn, but just a little personal experience in the field?
Yeah, I'll say that I have noticed an increase in wages over the decade of my career so far. You know, it wasn't unusual to come in, and I was very excited to have my first job at $13 an hour. I know now that Green Diamond, my company will pay someone starting out in more the range of $22 an hour. So I think there's been an adjustment in the wage scale of forestry also, as this work, I think, is more accurately valued, and people are starting to appreciate and understand the work that we're doing. So I do think at least at this point in time, we are seeing more of a living wage jobs in forestry. I don't have the proper
Right.
statistics to back that up, but maybe Matt and Matthew have more to say on that.
Well, and we can also do some follow-up reporting on this. I want to reflect a couple of questions in the chat which relate to the role of environmental activists who during the 80s, I remember one of our great reporters who used to be a tree sitter and came down in the late 80s, early 90s, where anything that referenced forestry was sort of seen as anti-forest. And that's another stereotype, but all of you have spoken with this tremendous vision of sustaining the forests. So tell us a little bit about how you see this relating to the concerns of environmental activists and climate change activists.
Yeah, that's a really great question. There's a lot of my work in public affairs that directly addresses concerns like that. And I think there's a couple of different approaches that we can utilize to sort of not only dispel misinformation, but also kind of promote the important facts about forestry. And something I like to share is a Bigfoot analogy. So I've come to know that essentially you can present somebody with scientific evidence that something is true. For example, that Bigfoot is true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to believe. And so I think building trust and credibility is also a key step in helping people to understand and learn more about forestry. I think that partnership is a really useful tool there. For example, Calforests, Cal Fire, Green Diamond, if we are all sharing some of the same messages, then those different sources will speak differently to each person. But seeing that we believe the same thing and would like to share that with you, I think is more powerful than any one entity just trying to share information.
Thank you for that answer. Let's go to our final speaker and still have a little time for the questions in the chat. Our final speaker is Jay Lopez, the public member on the California Board of Forestry and Fire Protection, who will share insights into the diversity of job opportunities available in the forestry sector. Mr. Lopez, welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is my honor to be here to address this very important group and the initiative that is being launched. Is my job, or what I do on myself, represents what this initiative is, the opportunities that are given to people like me to do work in forestry. So a little thing I might bio is it'll be distributed or is being distributed, but it just tells you a little bit how I get here. I'm kind of the opposite end that Ms. Goldstein is. Once somebody has gone for about 40 years of forestry since I graduated. So I'll share a little bit of that. My mom and dad wanted me to be a doctor, a medical doctor, but I wanted something different. So I went to agriculture school, animal husbandry, and like Ms. Goldstein, I learned about forestry well into my first year of college. And it was the Society of American Foresters did a presentation of what forestry was all about. It was just an auditorium. I happened to be walking by in my university, walking there, and it fascinated me that exactly what Brita mentioned, that the whole array of knowledge that you need to have to manage a forest. Like Rita mentioned, is not just about the trees, but you need to know about the water, you need to know about the soil, you need to know about the relationships, the social aspect of it, the how to sell the forest products, how to make the products, how to take those products and transform it from a tree to something useful to all of us. So that was extremely fascinating. So I changed at that time to the major in forestry and graduated in 1984, 40 years ago. The first jobs are tough. The first job comes with the challenges that you are new, experiences require, and somebody with different background sometimes can be challenging. And Goldstein expressed real well. And when I entered the world of forestry, was the makeup of the staff, it was a little different than it is now. I'm glad to see the change, glad to see more women and more people of a diverse background, because we can bring that different experience to what we do right here. So throughout the years, I started with forestry, forest management, doing nursery work, and all the basic forestry. I got to work, like, the great opportunity to work in the rainforests in southern Mexico and Central America, all the way to the forests in the higher elevations of northern Mexico and here in the United States as well. And then the other part that is nice of forestry, as you knowledge has to be broad in what you do, is also the opportunities out there. So I went into the fire business and I worked for Los Angeles County Fire Department Forestry Division. The Forestry Division is environmental side of the fire department. It's a lot of disturbance that happens in a community or in a location before, during, after a fire, before, during, and after development, and before, during, and after some kind of disruption of the ecosystem. And forestry, the knowledge has, the knowledge that a forester has, rather, is so integral to bring those connections to that. So I had the great opportunity to do that while I was with Los Angeles County Fire Department. Not only do the fire side and, get the hose, get the rake, and do all that part, which is very good when you're 20, 30 years old, not 64 like me. It's a little bit difficult nowadays. But they have that ability to also to make a difference in how an area is managed, either for development or for other areas. And now, I have the opportunity to sit in the Board of Forestry. I'm also doing a pilot program for the state. It's called the California Wildfire Mitigation Program. And we use science-based knowledge to retrofit homes against wildfire, but also doing defensible space. And then we bring in forestry into it, and we bring in the CCCs, Ms. Jessica Quinones, the CCCs to help us with that work. And also some of the work that we do when we cut in some trees, there's plenty of firewood out there to give to many people. And a lot of these projects, especially with grants, it's just what we cut becomes firewood. As a forester, one of the things that we do, and we're taking these trees, cutting them, and putting them for utilization, for not only for wood, not only for people that want to do benches, tables, or something like that, but also for carvers and people that utilize the wood. So nothing gets wasted. Everything gets used in there. Lastly, I just want to say a couple more things. It was mentioned that and thank you, Ms. Goldstein, for this. Forestry teaches the future. Is what we do, we're not gonna see it. What we do is gonna be for somebody else. So having that impact in the future of this country, in the future of this world, is very rewarding for me. And the significance of the picture behind me is that when the European settlers were coming here in the United States, and don't recall which one was the book, but one of the historians mentioned this. It was telling the new settlers, the native people were telling new settlers something very simple, but it's very important: no trees, no water. And I know it's a single tree behind me, but the lake that is right next to it is huge. So the proper management, the proper legacy that we're gonna leave as foresters for our future citizens in this country and this world is very rewarding to know that we're gonna have that impact.
Thank you. This was so inspiring. Each of our speakers spoke almost from the front lines of sustaining, preserving, respecting forests. We have more questions in the chat, but we are out of time. And I would like each of our speakers to have a final word on a question that I think all of us concerned about the future of climate change and concerned about our own roles in that epic drama would be very interested in. What do you see as the future of California's forests, and how do you see this initiative addressing the future of forests in this state? Let's start with Mr. Lopez, since we ran out of time to ask you individual questions.
Well, thank you. And the beauty of forestry and the beauty of natural resources management is that something renewable is something that we can take, but also put back. Proper forest management, proper utilization of wood products, proper harvesting of wood products, and how we present and how we make it a single thing that is being used by everybody. Not too many people know, and it seems very simple, but pencils, and when we said your house is built with wood, or a lot of materials that we use, or daily stuff that we use, such as toothpaste, has wood materials in there. And as just learned recently, one of the aircrafts being one of the satellites being worked on right now, a lot of the material inside of that satellite is wood, because it's reliable, it has very good characteristics to be in space. So this idea of the management of forests by foresters and educated people, with the help of all the citizens understanding what it is and how those products benefit them, is the legacy that we can leave behind.
Thank you. That was really eloquent. Brita Goldstein, how do you see the future of forests and your role in that?
Yeah, I think I'm reflecting on Jay's response in that these resources do grow back. So I think, combined with the idea that we are seeing these unprecedented changes in our environment, we're never going to be able to go back. We're always going to need to keep moving forward with our management. And because things grow so quickly, we need to maintain, all those fuels, all of those trees, year after year. And so I think the future of forestry is bright if we get enough people in the workforce to meet those needs for that type of maintenance.
Thank you so much. And Chief Reischman, your final, I could almost say headline for today's briefing on the future of forests and your initiative.
Well, thank you, first off. And I agree with the other speakers, and they're much more eloquent than I am. But I think one thing to remember in California is that we have very, very protective forest practice rules that by law require us to be growing more trees than we would ever cut. And that's what we're responsible to do. I think there's a misconception that if it's green, it's healthy. If you consider the average return fire interval in the Sierra Nevada, for instance, we know it was every 7 to 12 years any acre would see fire. And now we know we have stands that haven't seen fire in 50, 60 years, and the amount of ingrowth and brush and everything else that's come in to outcompete those stands and make them weak and more susceptible to fire. We know that if we don't continue our management, we're going to be continuing to see large and catastrophic fire. And the hope is that by increasing our workforce, diversifying our workforce, that we're going to have an opportunity to we know we can't treat everywhere, but we know we can strategically treat areas that are going to create bigger benefits for watersheds, for communities, for evacuation routes. And as funds become more restrictive, and they will eventually, the pendulum will swing, we need to prioritize and figure out where we're going to treat, how we're going to treat, and how we're going to ultimately maintain, because we know that every 5 to 10 years, stands will regrow. Fuel breaks will regrow, and we're going to have to maintain those stands. So there's a lot of different moving pieces, but we all need to work together, and I do know that. So I'm excited about it. Thank you.
You're giving us very hopeful messages. And Mr. Diaz, you have the last word. What's your final elevator pitch for this initiative?
Well, my final elevator pitch is, well, first of all, again, I want to thank everybody that's here with us today. It's been a pleasant hour. I have a lot of hope, in my own opinion, and we have already covered the fact that forests are not static in nature. They're constantly growing. They're dynamic systems, and we're dealing with trying to manage these dynamic systems. But I think about the previous question that was going back to the 80s and 90s, where there was a lot of acrimony over forest management. And I reflect upon today, and I see that we have, generally speaking, there's a much higher level of awareness within the public setting, the voices of California as a whole, that forest management is certainly needed in order to allow us to move forward without having tremendous amounts of loss into the future. And I think that this initiative is focused on that explicitly, educating individuals out there that have an interest in making in selecting a pathway that's going to assist our state in making the changes necessary. I feel like we're in a renaissance. When we look back at the 80s and early 90s, clearly we were not in a renaissance. But when I push forward 30 years and the higher level of understanding that we have collectively, I feel like we're in a space where we can celebrate to a certain extent that we all understand what needs to happen. And with that, it brings me hope for the future.
Thank you. I would just say each of you has contributed a great lesson for many of us who knew very little going into this briefing. You were terrific spokespeople for this initiative, and we look forward to staying in touch and hope we can help promote the opportunities you've discussed in forestry with our audiences. Thank you so much, and have a very restful and what can I say about Thanksgiving? Just hope you each have a great holiday. Thank you so much.